Well, I am here today to discuss marriage, trying to understand and make sense of marriage, and also place it in the wider discussions about same-sex marriage. Firstly, I'll be sharing some of the very basic facts about the human experience that have made sense to most people to believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. Second thing, I'm going to point out a few obstacles and difficulties that people have who argue in favour of same-sex marriage that they often face when they make their case. I am, like most of you, a relatively young-ish person just trying to think my way through this issue and grapple with it myself. I'm going to say that majority of people think that when it comes to this particular issue, they think like this. Marriage is a great thing. We all agree with that. The only difference is who we should let get married. So another way of sort of saying that is everyone sort of thinks, yeah, well, marriage is great. We're all on the same page about that. You know, it's just some people have got issues with gay people and therefore they have issues with gay marriage. Or some people don't have issues with gay people and therefore they're okay with gay marriage. So that's the main sort of divide, how people think or feel towards gay people. But I think there's one really obvious fact why that's the wrong way of understanding this issue. And that's because there actually are quite a few gay people and also kids of gay parents who love their parents dearly and who don't think gay marriage is a good thing. So that wouldn't fit that narrative before. That would seem just very confusing. Gay people against gay marriage? How does that sort of work? So what's the alternative way of understanding this issue? Well, I think that it's actually the other way around. It's not what you think or feel about gay people that reflects what you stand on this issue. It's what you think marriage is that reflects where you stand on the issue of gay marriage. And contrary to popular presentation, I think there are actually two very different views, conceptions, pictures, or understandings of what marriage is. And the first view has been around for a very long time, pretty much since the start of recorded history. It basically thinks that there's something pretty special about men and women. Their bodies don't really make sense just on their own, and that when men and women come together and fall in love and fall into bed together and make babies and make a family, that it's generally a good thing trying to keep this bundle of things together, right? So under this view, the quote-unquote traditional view of marriage, things like husbands and wives, fathers and mothers, its connection to family life, the importance of it being a permanent relationship, till death to us part type thing, as well as faithful, to you and to you alone, are sort of what makes sense of the whole point of why marriage is around. Now, as you'll know, there's nothing particularly religious about that particular view, but that's existed alongside a much more recent view of marriage that's gained a lot of traction in the last 30 or 40 years or so. And this particular understanding of marriage places much more emphasis on the intimacy of the couple, their emotional fulfillment, their happiness as a couple. It's popularly represented in popular culture, TV, radio, film. Under this view, family life or having kids is completely optional. It's just up to each couple if they want. There's no sort of inherent connection to it. It's just an option. If they want it, that's great. If they don't, not a problem. Now, I think what is clear from understanding those two particular views is there's nothing particularly very homosexual about either of them. There's nothing particularly gay about either of them. There's also nothing particularly or uniquely religious about them as well. So I think if you just understand that, why is it the case then that some people think that there are these strange people who would be against same-sex marriage? Well, I think that's the case if, like most people believe, that there's only one view of marriage. It's that newer sort of sexier soulmate version of marriage, the idea of marrying your BFF, your best friend forever. This is your number one relationship. And if you think that everyone believes that view of marriage, then you're going to be baffled why some people would be against gay people being married, right? Because if gay people and lesbians can form those sorts of deep, committed relationships just like heterosexuals can, then why would some people be against that? So now you know that it's not because someone's homophobic or bigoted that they don't think that's the right way to go. It's because they have an alternate, a different conception of marriage. But it's not the case that it has to be motivated out of fear or hatred or animus in any sense to gay people. Nothing of what I've said about either of those two views proves that either one is right. Okay? I've just sort of laid them out there in front so you can see. So that's even before you get to the same-sex bit. You can just sort of realise that there's two different views about marriage. What it shows in this current debate is it's not about how we think or feel towards gay people that's the real issue. It's much more about what particular idea of marriage we have. Now, some people might say, okay, well, that second view of marriage, the sort of romantic soulmate one, that's the view of marriage that I think is right. It sounds really good. And let's be honest, there's many parts about it that are obviously true and are obviously very important. Things like intimacy and love and the importance of commitment. So many people sort of think, okay, well, if that's the case and that's what marriage is, then why don't we allow gay people to get married? Well, here are a few concerns I've always had with that just particular idea of what marriage is, the idea of its sort of emotional, deep emotional fulfillment. Here are some obstacles, I think. The first one is it becomes really unclear why it should be just between two people. And when you think about it, many of us could be in loving and committed relationships with more than one person. In fact, in the US and many parts of the world, many different polyamorous or polygamous groupings of people of multiple number who say they're all in loving, committed relationships with people. So why, under this particular view of marriage, as marriage being just about love and commitment, is it limited just to two people? I'm not sure. The other thing is also why vows, or that sort of understanding of marriage, should see it as something for life, something till death do us part, permanent. Because if under that idea of marriage is all about the emotional fulfillment and the happiness of the couple, well then why shouldn't the couple just be free to break it off when the love doesn't last? What's the point of committing to having permanently good feelings about the other person when we always know that they go up and down? So in that vision of marriage, it makes it really unclear why it should be something for life. And then the other concern I've had with it is, under that particular one, I really don't know what role the government, law, public policy have to do with regulating or being involved in marriage, and essentially sort of putting state approval on friendships, essentially, just sort of deeply committed friendships. So it's unclear to me that vision of marriage is able to provide a strong framework for some of the things that I think people on both sides of the marriage debate think are important. Things like, that it's for life and that it's between two, and that there's a reason why the government's sometimes always been involved in it in some way. Some super basic facts about the human condition that have generally made it the case that lend good support for it to believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. Now, the first of these, most of you will know, it's the fact that most of us are pretty powerfully attracted to engaging in acts of love that often bring about new life. So newsflash, sex between men and women can make babies. But you didn't arrive here by stork. So that's number one, sex makes babies. The second truth is that while you and I can individually and ah about whether one day we want to settle down, have a family and bring kids into the world, if a society collectively ums and ahs too long, basically they don't exist. They cease to exist. So the second truth is that society needs babies. And then the third truth that marriage rests is the idea that kids ideally ought to be growing up with their own mother and father. That mothering and fathering, being a mum, being a dad, are just, as one day many of you will know, are just very different experiences and different ways of loving a child into the world and them growing up. So sex makes babies, society needs babies, and babies need a mum and a dad. So what should be clear from just that particular vision of marriage is that there's nothing homophobic about it or anti-gay. There's nothing even inherently religious about the particular view. So what's become known throughout many parts of the world as the debate about same-sex marriage, the debate about gay marriage, is less about whom should we let marry and what we think or feel about gay people, and much more about what we understand marriage to be and the importance it has.
marriageequals.org.au